We got cameras everywhere. There's no way you can hide. There's no way you can run. It's totally different.
A music executive and community activist is accused of running a criminal empire in Los Angeles. Eugene Henley Jr. facing RICO charges, allegedly tying him to the notorious Rolling 60s street gang.
He claimed to be the savior of LA, a man who advocated for peace, organized anti-gang initiatives, and served as Nipsey Hussle's mentor. However, the feds recently disclosed that Eugene Big U Henley was not who he said he was. A vicious gang leader, suspected of operating a violent enterprise, embezzling millions, and even ruthlessly killing his own artists, was the driving force behind the charity events and community involvement. What actually became of RW? How did Big U deceive everyone for so many years?
The federal government usually does not bring these types of charges unless they've done extensive investigation. It looks like he has been under investigation for several years.
Along the way, we are uncovering the most sinister secrets in Hollywood and delving into the evidence that might put him away for good. Big U marketed himself for years as a neighborhood hero who had changed his ways after serving time in prison and as a reformed gangster. In addition to hosting anti-violence demonstrations and launching Nipsey Hussle's career, he also had a friendly relationship with NBA players Shaq and Draymond Green. The feds, however, said it was all a front. Big U allegedly operated a criminal organization behind closed doors that used intimidation and terror to rule LA.
These charges are true because they're still allegations. They are not a done deal. They're allegations. If they're true, then Eugene Henley was somebody who presented two faces to this world.
The feds claim his empire was founded on lies, and they now have the receipts to back it up, from extorting celebrities to planning EMs. This is about how Hollywood allowed him to operate in the open for decades, not just about one man, Big U Eugene. In Los Angeles, Henley was more than just a name, he was a force. Some saw him as a former gangster who changed his ways, guiding Nipsey Hussle, implementing anti-gang initiatives, and improving his neighborhood. To others, however, he remained the brutal enforcer of the rolling 60s snares, working behind the scenes while disguising himself as a local hero. Big U's metamorphosis, according to the feds, was really a front. Years in the works, the indictment claims that his non-profit organization, Developing Options, was a front for fraud and embezzlement, rather than merely aiding children. Additionally, the FBI claimed that he was planning robberies, extortion schemes, and even EMs while posing for pictures with local officials and celebrities like Shaq and Draymond Green.
Career criminal known as Big U, who used his contacts and leadership role in the Crips criminal street gang, the entertainment industry, and a youth charity to further his own criminal enterprise.
As an enforcer for the Rolling 60s Crips, Big U gained notoriety in the 1980s, which marked the beginning of his ascent to prominence. However, he leveled up after being released from prison in 2004 rather than simply going back to living on the streets. According to the feds, Big U established a criminal organization apart from the gang that preyed on singers, professional athletes, and anybody else who ventured to conduct business in Los Angeles without his consent. Big U dominated not only the streets of Los Angeles but also its public perception. He created a story of atonement by associating with Nipsey Hussle and other up-and-coming celebrities, which has deceived everyone up to this point. After years of observation, the federal government is now prepared to share its findings.
The federal government usually does not bring these types of charges unless they've done extensive investigation. It looks like he has been under investigation for several years.
In what way then did Big U trick so many people for so long? What part did his nonprofit play in concealing his wrongdoings? You will discover how extensive his empire truly was as we go deeper into this tale, and why it is all collapsing today. There was an unwritten rule when you arrived in Los Angeles: you needed to check in. However, Big U saw this as a commercial decision rather than merely a matter of civility. A risky, well-thought-out system that gave him authority over not only the streets, but also the most influential tourists in the city. No one was immune to Big U's hold, including musicians, athletes, and even business titans. The federal government claimed that Big U's check-in procedure was motivated by extortion rather than respect. You had to pay Big U's enterprise for protection if you wanted to do business in Los Angeles, and you paid the price for it if you didn't. According to federal filings, people had to pay hundreds of dollars to prevent being robbed or worse until he quit. One dispensary owner spent $25,000 a month for protection, and in reprisal, about a dozen armed men assaulted his establishment.
When I go to Chicago, I respect Chicago wholeheartedly. I check in. When I go to Atlanta, I check in. When I go places, I check in. And I don't think nobody is safe. I know dudes right now from LA.
In addition, Big U ran a campaign to incite panic about the entire check-in process. Upon reviewing his interviews, it appears that he made a sizable profit throughout these check-ins.
If he ever find out who did that, he gonna knock everybody down. You understand what I'm saying? You just caught slipping. You know, that's how it is. You know what I'm saying? And you try your best not to be slipping.
Based on my review of documents in the course of this investigation, Developing Options appears to have failed to comply with some or potentially all of those requirements.
It was not limited to tiny companies either. Some of the biggest stars in music and sports were influenced by Big U. NBA players were compelled to pay Big U $100,000 to get their money back after allegedly being defrauded of millions in rigged dice games. Additionally, the lives of rappers who failed to check in were in danger. A terrifying illustration of how Big U applied his rules was when Quando Rondo's cousin was sent out for supposedly not following the check-in procedure. Big U was not merely a shadowy organization, he boldly displayed his power. He cautioned guests on podcasts such as Nothing to Something that failure to check in would have dire consequences. This went beyond simple intimidation. It was a deliberate action to further cement his status as the undisputed kingpin of Los Angeles. There was more to the system than extortion. It has to do with control. Big U established an empire based on loyalty and intimidation by enforcing athletes and celebrities into his sphere of influence. According to the feds, he was able to control entire industries as well as individuals through this system, making him one of the most influential people in Los Angeles.
His own words shows that wasn't true. The complaint says that Big U used his mafia-like enterprise to intimidate businesses and individuals in the community, and they used an interaction between him and Nipsey Hussle to illustrate how they say the enterprise was ran.
Big U's name was well known in Los Angeles for many years. However, the events of January 24, 2021 might have been the catalyst for the fall of his kingdom. This was no ordinary crime, it was intimate. A teenage rapper named RW, who was contracted to Big U's label, made a diss single in which he ridiculed Big U and questioned his authority. RW was shot in the face and allowed to decay beside the highway when he was discovered dead in the Nevada desert a few days later. However, the evidence that investigators found links Big U to the crime site, and it is chillier than anyone could have guessed. Big U himself coordinated RW's vacation to Las Vegas. Court documents and witnesses claim that RW was working with Big U and his friends to make music at an Airbnb studio. RW is seen getting into a car and leaving the studio late at night with luggage and surveillance footage. However, this is when suspicions arise. After tracking Big U's movements all day, his phone abruptly went dead for 45 minutes. RW was gone when it got back online.
Investigators noted Big U's phone location data and witnesses showed he arrived to Vegas at an Airbnb. On January 24th of 2021, Big U arrived to a studio and RW was there, recording until around midnight. A little after 12:30 a.m., Big U left the studio and his phone stopped reporting his location.
Using witness accounts and DNA evidence, investigators were able to put together RW's last hours. His body was found with several gunshot wounds close to Interstate 15. Drag marks around his ankles indicated that he had been eliminated and then hauled into the desert. The unsettling thing comes next. It is unclear if RW was ambushed or coerced into the automobile against his will because he was not equipped for the bitterly cold January conditions. However, this was no isolated violent incident. It was planned. Investigators were informed by witnesses that Big U's accomplices took video equipment out of the studio shortly after RW's M. This film may have provided a clear picture of what transpired that evening. According to federal agents, this video would have shown Big U and RW fighting just before the M.
His body was found on the side of the road near Interstate 15. Investigators say he died from multiple gunshot wounds. They also noted he wasn't dressed for the weather. Remember, it's late January around this time.
Unsettling information regarding Big U's actions prior to the M was also disclosed by RW's relatives. Big U made several phone calls to RW's aunt in the weeks leading up to the trip to check on him and make travel arrangements. However, he severed all ties with RW's family after his passing and would not respond to their inquiries about the true events in Vegas. There was more from the feds. In 2023, they started looking into Big U through wiretaps and found evidence that he had told witnesses not to talk to police about RW's M. This was more than just self-defense. It was to prevent the exposure of his entire business. This is when the situation becomes even more frightening. RW was not the only victim connected to Big U's enterprise, according to federal officials. The extent of Big U's influence is being questioned as they are currently looking into whether he was involved in other well-known killings, including those of PNB Rock and Nipsey Hussle. What then caused this case to take so long to resolve? RICO cases such as this are extremely complex, according to legal experts. They need solid proof and assistance from insiders who might be too afraid to speak. However, one thing is evident now that the indictment has been received. This goes beyond just 1 million. It is about overthrowing a violent and fear-based empire. It took more than simply years of surveillance and proof to bring Eugene Big U Henley to the federal government's attention. It was treachery. Investigators were alerted by a member of his inner group. Big U's dominion is currently disintegrating more quickly than anyone could have predicted. DJ Academics claims that WAC 100 was crucial in bringing Big U's alleged wrongdoing to light. Big U's old adversary WAC allegedly provided federal officials with evidence regarding Big Us's involvement in robberies, extortion, and even M. Furthermore, sources assert that his cooperation was crucial in establishing the case against Big U, even though WAC has not publicly acknowledged these claims.
I will say some of what you may have done may have helped with the timing, right? I think you tipping off Big U.
WAC was not the only one speaking though. One of Big U's closest friends, Loose Cannon, also betrayed him, according to Adam22 from No Jumper. According to reports, Loose Cannon gave information about how Big U planned extortion and robbery operations around Los Angeles, including the notorious check-in system that singled out sports and celebrities.
You obviously co-signed Loose Cannon telling the story about how Big U basically got Nipsey killed or whatever.
We never said he got Nipsey killed.
Okay, but you're saying that he had premeditated knowledge that Nipsey was going to get killed. And that didn't really pan out, although a lot of people are now looking at those statements as if they might have a lot more validity than they once did.
This was a total collapse of Big U's enterprise, not just a betrayal. Alongside Big U, a number of other defendants were identified in the indictment, including Termaine Williams, also known as Loose Cannon, Sylvester Robinson, also known as V, and Mark Martin, also known as Bear Claw. They are all charged with involvement in the criminal operation, ranging from planning robberies to intimidating witnesses. Legal analysts claim that the federal government is systematically dismantling Big U's organization through the use of RICO laws, because each defendant in a RICO prosecution is accountable for all of the charges in the indictment. Even those with minor involvement could be sentenced to life in prison if found guilty. Additionally, prosecutors now have access to the type of information they have been seeking for years, thanks to insiders like Loose Cannon coming clean about Big U. However, this is where the situation becomes even more intricate. Big U will not die in peace. He professed his innocence and criticized WAC 100 for allegedly framing him in a series of videos he uploaded on Instagram before giving himself in. He pledged to fight the allegations with all of his might and said the government was unfairly pursuing him.
I just need y'all prayers. Need y'all. I don't know what to say. People are supposed to help me. I hope you help me. If you can't, you don't. Don't worry about it. A lot of stuff y'all hearing is straight trash. And I appreciate the love. And I appreciate people who've been helping me.
Boggu was not hesitant to expose other accused rats who undermined his story, in addition to WAC.
And I just want to say this to y'all. When they raided my house, this is my property, it was asking about WAC. WAC, Loose Cannon, 600, and this internet stuff. All of y'all filed. All y'all who be sending shit around the internet, all y'all who be promoting and listening to what these niggas saying, all y'all giving these likes and hidden likes, all y'all supporting this.
Supporters of Big Use have not given up on him either. Black community members have united behind him, feeling that his previous involvement with gang activity is the reason he's being unfairly singled out. In support of his efforts creating options, social professionals and activists have come out, claiming that he actually contributed to a decrease in gang violence in South Los Angeles. Even his most ardent supporters are finding it more difficult to deny the accusations against him as additional evidence surfaces, including wiretaps and witness statements. According to the feds, they have a strong case against Big U that might result in his life in prison.
That they have some very solid evidence, enough that, they're willing to disclose so much. And I was really surprised that Big U went live on his way to jail. I think that at this point, as in most situations, there's nothing he can say across social media that's going to help him fight his case.
The impact of Big U extended beyond the streets. Rappers, athletes, and even influencers were all under his sway for years, thanks to his notorious check-in system, terror, and loyalty. However, startling names are now emerging as the feds delve further into his company. Names that have the power to alter our perceptions of the entertainment sector in Los Angeles. The indictment claims that Big U's company targeted celebrities who traveled to Los Angeles for business or pleasure in addition to extorting local companies. Shaquille O'Neal and Draymond Green, two NBA players, were reportedly entangled in his web. In one case, Shaq gave $220,000 to Developing Options, Big U's nonprofit, which was intended to support sports teams like the Crenshaw Rams and youth initiatives. However, according to federal authorities, Big U transferred the majority of that money into his personal account rather than assisting the community. Nor was Draymond Green exempt. He gave $20,000 to Developing Options in 2019, money that also found its way into Big U's coffers. This is when things become even more gloomy. Big U allegedly utilized these donations as leverage to keep these celebs under control and make sure they remain silent about his actions and loyalty. It was not just athletes though. Rappers were also targeted by Big U's check-in system. Quando Rondo allegedly did not check in with Big U before traveling to Los Angeles, so he had to learn this the hard way. The outcome? According to federal officials, his cousin was involved in an act of sanctioned violence. This was a message to everyone who dared to break Big U's rules, not merely a warning. Then there is the example of Nipsey Hussle, whose name will always be associated with Big U's history. Big U has long maintained that he helped Nipsey start his career and mentored him, although there have been long-running allegations regarding their falling out before Nipsey's untimely death in 2019. According to several insiders, Big U might have been involved in planning the events that resulted in Nipsey's M. According to reports, the Fed is looking into this notion as part of its broader case against him. Now, Big U's first Instagram Live following Nipsey's passing was the clearest indication of his involvement. He chuckled.
Wait, don't you ain't know no. Don't you ain't know. We got tway now. Yeah, tell my Michael bro, you would have given me justice for that.
Although it took the feds more than 4 years to prosecute Eugene Big U Henley, most people are unaware of how complicated this case is. This was about destroying an entire empire, not just one crime. As the indictment specifics become known, it becomes evident that the feds were pursuing after everyone connected to Big U, not just him. The extent of the indictment is astounding. Big U and his cohorts are accused of committing a variety of crimes, including robbery, extortion, and embezzlement. This is where it becomes even more startling, though. Every defendant included in the indictment is accountable for each and every accusation under RICO legislation. This implies that a conviction could result in life in jail for even those with minor roles.
At some point, and it could come from different sources. It doesn't necessarily have to be an informant that's mentioned in an indictment. It could be someone that they've dealt with in the past that's renounced the gang lifestyle, but they definitely have to have someone from the inside or someone that was in the inside at one point.
The indictment against Big U is more than 100 pages long. Now, in their case, the feds say he ran a mafia-like enterprise. He's accused of murder, kidnapping, embezzlement, robbery, and extortion. And that's just to name a few.
According to experts, RICO cases are notoriously challenging to prosecute since they necessitate assistance from insiders who might be too afraid to speak in solid proof. However, the feds claim that they have been employing wiretaps, surveillance footage, and witness statements to support their case for years. Additionally, some insiders later changed their minds, and give the kind of information that prosecutors need to make the connections, even though at first they refused to help out of fear of reprisals. To support their case against Big U, the feds also mostly relied on digital evidence, such as emails, texts, and posts on social media. According to investigators, these exchanges illustrate a pattern of cooperation between Big U and his associates, demonstrating how they organized robberies, coerced victims, and threatened witnesses.
Very well written, very well laid out, and definitely when you read the indictment, it definitely gives you a different picture than, what Big U has displayed over social media. And
according to sources, the authorities have a strong case against Big U and are now merely awaiting a court hearing to reveal all of the information that was concealed by deceit and lies.
So what they doing is they go on the internet and these dudes say that I did shit on the internet. Then when you say I did on the internet, they go investigate it. Now you raiding my houses, raiding my shops, raiding all this stuff. And tell me I'm committing crimes and covering up with developing our
Charges in this gang bust range from racketeering to murder. By second fugitive the FBI was looking for was also apprehended. The FBI says Henley is from the Hyde Park area of South LA. If convicted, he would face a max sentence of life in federal prison.
They mentioned all these other gang members that he was associated with. And, the entertainment check is not going to be enough to support all of those people. So, if they're going to be part of the entourage, he has to find a way for them to eat.
This case is far from over, but Big U's empire is collapsing. The repercussions could reveal secrets that will rock Los Angeles to its foundation, with bombshell accusations, insider betrayals, and Hollywood linkages still being investigated. Is there more to this story than meets the eye, or do you believe Big U is guilty?